Howdy Beans, just a quick disclaimer with this episode. Nothing bad, nothing negative. I just want to say that in this episode, I might seem a bit weird and a bit odd, more than usual, obviously, for anybody there chuckling to themselves, more than usual. Basically, I had COVID before I recorded this, and I thought I was coming down off it, and I thought like I was feeling better, so I decided I would watch the movie and record this episode. Turns out halfway through recording this episode, I basically realised that I'm still a bit brain fogged at the time. I'm okay now, back to 100%. But at the time, I was still a bit brain fogged, still a bit sort of bit tired, a bit wired, to quote Nicolas Cage from The Rock. So I might be a bit weird in this episode, a bit sort of confused. I've decided to keep it though, mainly because if I'm being honest, when I re-listened to it, it was kind of funny, to be honest. And also, I feel like it fits the character of who Nick Cage is. Nick Cage is somebody who's very sporadic, very sort of odd, weird, very sort of different. You know what I mean? He very much goes off on tandems and goes off on weird waffling sort of moments, as you know. So I figured, in the spirit of Nick Cage and who Nick Cage is, that I would keep it in. So I haven't really edited this that much. I've only taken out the longer sections where I just kind of sat there and was like, I don't know what to say. But apart from that, it's all somewhat coherent. It does make sense. I just wanted to let this out at the beginning, just so you beans know and why I was a bit odd here. So one big advice I will give here is just don't do a podcast when you're coming down off COVID, because it'll be funny, but it probably won't be 100% as you would hope. But that's just how it goes. So enjoy. Hope you like it, and I will go and let you enjoy the rest of this episode. All right, bye beans.
Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy beans, and welcome back to the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host Luke. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. Now, I will say this bit of clarification before I begin. If I sound a bit funky or I sound a bit weird and my voice sounds a bit lower than usual, I'm just coming off COVID. It finally got me for the first time. So I'm probably don't sound too great and my brain's a bit confuzzled a bit. But, I'm dedicated to the art and podcasting never ends. To be honest, this episode probably won't come out for another few weeks. So by the time you're hearing this, I'm most likely going to be back to normal, feeling better and going to be over it. But as I'm recording this now, I'm coming off COVID. So if I do sound a bit funky, that is why. But I'm well, I'm good. So nobody needs to overly worry or panic. That being said, today I'm going to be doing a movie review. I'm going to be talking about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Nick Cage. Really, this movie should just be called Nick Cage the Movie, because that is basically what it is. With co-starring with the lovely, wonderful Pedro Pascal, or the daddy of the internet. I don't know where that began, really. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he's a handsome bloke, and I think he's fantastic, but I don't know where this whole daddy thing came from, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to get into that because that's a completely different topic. And we're not here to talk about people with daddy issues and Pedro Pascal and all that. We're just here to talk about Nick Cage being Nick Cage, which is so completely different. But before we get into that, I do need to do the business side of it. I do need to do the boring side, which is if you haven't as of yet, you can follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be updated on anything that I'll be doing, whether it be movies that I'm watching, TV shows that I'm watching, video games that I'm playing, books that I'm reading, all that jazz. Anything and everything that I'm doing, I will upload it there first. So if you follow me on there, you'll be able to hear about what I'm doing. As recording this, I think I'm about 951 followers. So if you want to add to that and get me to 1,000, that'd be absolutely fantastic, and I will be incredibly appreciated. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I've also what I'm going to start doing is putting pinned comments actually at the top of the comment section with a question. So anything there, just put it there. Today's top question is: what movies are you watching? What's the latest film that you watched? Anything that you're looking into wanting to watch or haven't watched or that sort of thing. Just put it in the pin section and we'll have a dialogue, and it'd be really fun to have a conversation there. But if you're not subscribed yet, just type in the Nerdstalgic podcast on YouTube and go hit subscribe there. Currently, I'm at 64 subscribers, hoping to get to 65, 70 before the beginning of summer. So if you can help me out, that would be absolutely fantastic, and I would appreciate that as well. Okay, so now all the boring stuff is out. As it is with most movie reviews I do, for season two. I haven't watched the movie yet, so I have nothing really much to say about it other than Nick Cage is in it and it looks amazing from what I've seen from the trailer. So what I'm going to be doing for this, for story time, is going to be talking about my love for Nick Cage. I do love Nick Cage. I'm a huge Nick Cage fan. I'm a hardcore Cage fan. Like, I'm a raging Cage madness, insane in the Cage, man. You know what I mean? Like, I love this guy. In my opinion, he can't do wrong. He's never been in a bad movie in his life. Every movie he's been in has been improved because it's got Nick Cage. Okay, I'm that much of a hardcore fan that no matter what movie, good, like the things with Nick Cage, he's had a fantastic career in cinema. He is an incredible actor. He's highly underrated, if you ask me. He has his own style of acting that most directors can't keep up with him when he acts because he's just an unhinged sort of fountain of creativity and insanity. He has his own style of acting, and he's just incredible, right? Now, with Nick Cage, obviously, being successful as he is and as talented as he is, he's had a lot of money and that he's had his issues, and he's kind of like Johnny Depp in that respect, where the fact of you make loads of money and then you just you've got so much you just want to keep spending it. And I'm not going to get into the legal side of it, but basically Nick Cage has kind of been under a lot of sort of debt that he has to pay back, which means that he has to be in basically any script that gets sent to him, he kind of has to take it. Meaning that, for every Con Air, we get the Wicker Man. Which, don't get me wrong, I like the Wicker Man. It's basically just a reporter on an island punching people out and then going, no, not the bees, not the bees, not the bees. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fantastic movie. I love it. It makes me laugh. The whole point of that movie is not meant to be funny. That movie is not meant to make you laugh. It's meant to be like a very thriller, spooky sort of murder mystery sort of film. You're not meant to be laughing, but it's just hilarious because of Nick Cage. You know what I mean? So for every national treasure, you get the not Blair Witch, you get the Wicker Man and stuff like that, and you get Willy's Wonderland and those sort of things. Like I loved him as Ghost Rider, and he made a Ghost Rider 2, and the second Ghost Rider movie is actually a reboot. But Nick Cage was so good in the role that even though they rebooted it, they still brought him back to play Johnny Cage. You know what I mean? Like he's that good as the role that they brought him back for the reboot. I mean, I even like that movie, and that movie didn't do very well. I remember going to cinemas to watching it because I just loved him as Ghost Rider. I love him in National Treasure when I would love a National Treasure 3. And I love him in that movie where he's trying to solve a mystery. It's a fantastic. He is as Bill Gates, not Bill Gates. Was it? Is it? I think his character's last name is Gates. I don't know if it's Bill Gates. No, that's there at Microsoft. But I love him in Con Air. Cameron Poe, put the bunny back in the box. I love it. You know what I mean? But even like movies where I can't. What's it called now? It's that movie with Cher. And he goes, "He's lost his hand. I've lost my hand. He has his hand. I don't have my hand." I think that it's so chaotic. Like every time I just watch this guy in a film, I know that no matter how bad the movie's going to be, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is because Nick Cage is there. I mentioned it earlier, Willy's Wonderland, which is basically a copy of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's a simple sort of premise. They've got this sort of in this little town. You've got these people that feed people to these animatronic sort of demon monsters, and that way they feed them, and that way the monsters won't get out, and it's kind of done in that sort of way. Like nobody's going to last the night. It's just a way to feed these demons. Anyway, Nick Cage's character breaks down. He doesn't talk for this whole movie. He says a few things. He's mostly screaming, but he hardly really says anything in this whole movie. And his car breaks down. Janitor guy's like, look, it's going to cost you so and so and so. But a mate of mine is looking for a janitor to look after his place overnight. All you gotta do is spend the night, and in the morning your car will be fixed. I'll have it done. Bish bash bosh. You pay off your debt that way. So he does it. And as the night goes on, and they had this other subplot where these teenagers get in, and teenagers do what teenagers try to do. And basically, for the whole movie, Nick Cage doesn't really say a word. He plays pinball machine while drinking like these energy drinks. And then every certain time he goes out, beats the crap out of animatronic robot, right? Does like screaming like ah, Well, that's a really bad interpretation. But he does a lot, Nick Cage sort of screaming, shouting, that sort of thing. And then at the end of the movie, basically, I think he says like one or two words, and then that's it. He gets in the car and leaves, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like the movie's pants. It ain't great, but because Nick Cage is there, and even though he doesn't talk, I'm still going. He's going to do something awesome in a minute, and he does do something awesome. You know what I mean? Like he's just a powerhouse. He has such a sort of energy about him that when you see him in a movie, you're going to have a good time. One of my favourite movies that he ever did was Face Off with John Travolta, and I love that movie so much. Is because you've got John Travolta, who is an amazing actor, again, who I feel like is an underrated actor, and he doesn't get as much credit as he should. Granted, a lot of his movies that he's doing nowadays aren't very good. They're straight to sort of streaming, straight to video, not fantastic. But John Travolta was a fantastic actor. And one thing that I love in Face Off is the fact of you have two powerhouses of the 90s, which was Nick Cage and John Travolta, going at each other. And then halfway through the movie, they kind of switch places. So then you have Nick Cage pretending and acting as like basically being a mimic to how John Travolta acts, sounds, his body movements, the way he walks, the way he talks, the way he holds himself, right? Then you've got John Travolta doing the same. So now you've got John Travolta doing the Cageisms, the way Nick Cage would walk, the way Xander Cage. Um, oh, is it Xander Cage? I think it's Nick Cage. I think last name is Cage. Cash Troy, sorry. The way Cash Troy, Nick Cage's character, the way he moves himself, the way he walks, the way he talks. So you basically got two powerhouse actors pretending to be each other. And it's just so fascinating to see how John Travolta basically interprets Nicolas Cageisms, and how Nicolas Cage interprets how John Travolta acts, and it's a fantastic movie as well for the action and all that. It's bombastic, it's silly, but it's a fantastic movie. And I love that because it shows the range and how good of an actor Nick Cage is. You know what I mean? So when I heard about this movie that was being made, that it was all about Nick Cage. It's like it's basically taking the piss. Everybody knows how much of a powerhouse and how much talent this guy has, but at the same stage is the fact of how many bad moves this guy's been in as well, and how that he's mad, he's crazy, he's eccentric. And then they brought this trailer out, basically talking about it's a movie about Nick Cage being Nick Cage, playing Nick Cage while also being Nick Cage. It's very meta, very fourth wall breaking. It's very silly, very stupid. It's a play on the whole idea of who Nick Cage is, and the idea and the myth and the legend of who Nick Cage is. It's just all of it. It's just if you're a fan like me, it's a Nick Cage wet dream. You know what I mean? And to me, that just sounds fantastic. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was in love. And it's been in my backlog. I've got, as you know, for season two, the beginning of season two has mostly been me catching up on my backlog of video games and movies that I've got to play and I've got to watch. And this is on there, and I was so looking forward to getting around to it, and I've finally gotten around to it. So, I'm doing the introduction now. I haven't watched the movie yet. I will go and watch the movie in a minute, but I'm really, really excited. My hopes are high for this film because I feel like even if this movie isn't very good, I'm still gonna have a good time. I know I am because Nick Cage is in it, and also that I'm a big fan of Pedro Pascal, and being able to see Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal together, and Pedro Pascal playing the villain, while also Nick Cage is playing the hero but playing himself. I'm all here for it. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'd love to see like Nick Cage and Johnny Depp together, like them doing a twist on themselves. You know, if they ever made a sequel to this movie, maybe it'd be the fact of Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and then just have like Johnny Depp playing Johnny Depp and Nick Cage playing Nick Cage, and just put them together and see what happens. At the moment, I'm just taking some of my favorite actors and just sort of mushing them together and then seeing what happens. But as you can tell, I'm still a bit sort of phlegmy, still a bit sort of coldy, but I'm very much looking forward to it. And it's probably the fact of the delirium because I'm coming off COVID that I'm still a bit sort of a bit wired. But I'm very excited. So let's get into it, shall we? Enough of my rambling. Let's get into the review. So into the review we go. Nick Cage is back. Not that he went anywhere. He's always been here. He's always been a presence. He's always been a creative force. I just finished watching the movie and I realized as I started recording this and I looked over at my notes, I didn't write any notes. I was so enthralled by this movie. This movie's about 107 minutes long. So it's not a long movie, but from start to finish, I was enthralled. I was smiling, I was giggling from ear to ear. Like, this is, a Nick Cage wet dream, basically. This movie is everything you ever wanted from a Nick Cage movie. You know, there are moments where Nick Cage is crazy. There are moments where Nick Cage is very sort of oh, I don't know. Is he ever calm? Is he ever relaxed? You know, it's over the top. It's silly. It's wonderful. You know what I mean? And it is an unbearable weight of massive talent. You can feel the talent on the screen. Now, a lot of people might sit there and go, "Lukey crazy," but that's just how I feel. But like as I mentioned, like I didn't write no notes, so this might not go very well, to be honest. We've done this before where I've tried to review a game or a TV show or movie where I've done no notes, and it's sometimes been good, sometimes it hasn't been. So we'll see how this goes. But as I mentioned, like, this is a fun film. I enjoy it. One thing that I enjoy the most of it really is the fact of they know what they're making. You know, they know they're making a silly sort of it's kind of like kind of like a biopic, but it's not a biopic. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we know what movie we're trying to make. It's a spoof movie. It's like, The Naked Gun. It's like we know it's silly. We're just going to enjoy ourselves. You know what I mean? And Nick Cage is up to 11. There's constantly references to his other movies. Like this movie starts with the end scene of Con Air, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh, a second, what's going on?" And then it sort of zooms out, and then that's when we get like the overall sort of arc of the story where the girl. Again, I don't really want no spoilers, but there's a girl in it that gets sort of kidnapped, and it turns out that she's watching the movie and she's a big fan of Nick Cage, and it all kind of ties in from there. And there are many times throughout this movie where there are like, for example, there were things that I didn't know. So, for example, there was references to Gone in 60 Seconds, which I love. Gone in 60 Seconds. I religiously quote that movie almost daily. It's one of me and my dad's favorite movies. That ain't a tool. That's a goddamn brick. It's a silly. It's silly, but I love it. Gone in 60 Seconds is one of my favorite. Now, and I knew that Nick Cage had done all his own driving stunts in that movie. And then, Harvey, Pedro Pascal's character, brings that up a couple of times, being like, "Yeah, I know you. I know you did. You did your own stunts." And Nicolas Cage is like, "Right, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did." And there's ones where like, they're trying to run from like one end of a field to another because they're currently being shot at. And then Javier, like being a super fan, He said, Nick Cage, you run first. No, I'll run after you. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And he goes, yeah, don't lie. I know you ran. Um, I saw you do it in National Treasure. And he's like, no, that's stunt coordinators. And Javier is like, well, no, I saw it in the special features and the DVD extra. It's that moment in the cage is like, yeah, true, fair enough. And then they run, and there are many moments like that which I love. There's little sort of like references to his other movies, either showing you the movie or talking about different roles in different movies. Obviously, Nick Cage has been around for a long time. So I love all the references and that sort of thing. Like I feel like sort of Captain America, where it's like, oh, I get that reference, or like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he does. I can't whistle at the moment. My mouth is dry, but he goes and he's clicking his fingers. Oh, yeah, whoa, 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 that thing. That's me. I'm like, hey, I get that reference. I get it. That's funny. I've seen that movie. I've seen that special feature because I have seen that special feature because, again, National Treasure. I love it. I've got it on DVD. Fantastic film. Fantastic series. And I'm really hoping for a third one. So the references are fantastic. The references are spot on. Then, you also have. It's like an it's kind of like Nicolas Cage in this movie, not the I don't know about maybe the real Nicolas Cage, I don't know, but in this movie, the Nick Cage is playing himself. He's also because he's playing a sort of well, I was gonna say a more sort of outlandish version of themselves, like like for example, the movie Tropic Thunder, where the whole sort of point of that movie is to make fun of how movies are made, how actors go too far in roles, how actors do too much, go too far into method, and how they are sort of not when they're acting. And the whole point of the movie is to kind of just take the piss, really. And when you see a lot of these sort of movies where they play themselves, like for example, This Is the End, where you had Seth Rogen playing a more exuberant and a more sort of weird and odd version of himself, the same with Jonah Hill and that sort of thing in that movie. That's what I was going to say Nick Cage is doing here. But the thing is, Nick Cage, for who he is and for the how he acts and his roles, if anything, I feel like Nick Cage is just playing him. Like generally, he's just being himself. He's not acting. He's generally like, if it, like there probably was a script, but at times they were probably like, okay, this is a scene between you and this character. Um, just do it. Just talk to yourself. Just see what happens. Maybe there was a script, but I would happily believe it if it was like, yeah, we just let Nick Cage do what he wanted. He came on set. We told him the scene. This is what we need you to get from point A to point B. There you go. Turn the camera on, action. You know what I mean? I'd believe that if someone told me it. Because there's a moment in this where like they do de-aging technology, which is they do it really fantastically, to be honest. Where they have like a younger Nick Cage. Nick calls him Nicky, right? And there are moments where like again this existential crisis that Nick Cage is Nick Cage, if that makes sense, um, in the film has this moment where like he's talking to himself, a younger version of himself, and he's like, "You're a star, you're on top." He's like, "You're back. Not that you ever went anywhere. You're a hero. You're a superstar. You're an actor. You're sexy. You're gorgeous." Very much his ego, right? And there's a scene in it where Nick Cage makes out with himself, and I'm sitting there laughing, being like, "Yeah, no, like I'd believe that. I'd believe that Nick Cage would make out for himself. I'm not like I'm not saying Nick Cage is egotistical. I'm not saying that Nick Cage is full of himself. That's not true. I don't believe it, even if it was true, to be honest. But it's kind of those where I watched and I was like, yeah, Nick Cage would probably make out of himself. It makes sense because it just does because it's Nicolas Cage. He's a legend. You know what I mean? Like this guy's weird. This guy's crazy. I love him. Um, but if there were those moments where he was talking to his younger self, which again, really, really well done. But this movie, it's silly. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't take itself seriously. It's from start to finish. Everybody's having fun. Everybody's being stupid. Pedro Pascal is fantastic in his role as Javi. He plays basically a sort of cartel sort of leader who is a huge fan of Nicolas Cage, and he has a huge room full of memorabilia from The Rock, from Gone in 60 Seconds, from National Treasure, from Face Off, from Con Air, from there were references to really obscure movies like I think it's called It Could Be You, which is a movie basically where Nick Cage plays a cop. This is how much of a fan I am, right? Again, this very obscure movie. Not many people have probably seen it. But basically, Nick Cage plays a cop in New York, and he's a very nice guy. He's a nice bloke. He's a Mr. Deeds, basically. He's a very sort of selfless, sort of decent bloke. And he goes into this cafe, and basically he hasn't got a tip to pay the waitress to pay for the food. He says, "Tell you what, right? I'm just going to do the lottery. If I win, I'll come back tomorrow, right, and we'll split it, right? But if I don't win, I'll still come back tomorrow, and I'll pay my tip and double it, just to say, sort of, you know." And the woman's like, "Yeah, okay, fair if I take you up on that bet." So that night, the guy, he goes home, sees his wife. Lottery's on TV. It ends out that he wins. He wins millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then he kind of has this kind of crisis of like, should I give her the money? I've just met her. She's a stranger. But no, because he's a decent bloke, he then decides to go the next day, and she meets him, and she's like, "Sorry for yesterday, I was in a bit of a mood." And he was like, "Yeah, well, I've got something to show you, got something to tell you. I won the lottery last night, and I want to split it with you." And then sort of the movie goes on from there. It's a wonderful movie. It's underrated, not many well known, but like it's one of those sort of films where, you know, it's a Nick Cage sort of movie. A lot of people just look over it, but it's a generally good film. But there's references to that. Like I paused the screen, like in Harvey's sort of memorabilia room, and I was like, "Yeah, I know where that's from. I know where that's from. I know what movie that's from." There was the chainsaw from Mandy. You know what I mean? Like there was some like real sort of crazy references of like all of them really good. And this is what I mean. Like the references are on point. It's like if you're gonna do a movie where you're spoofing off Nick Cage and his Nick Cage isms, you know, you go for it. You know, have the references, have different props from different movies. You know what I mean? Have Nick Cage go off and be crazy. Have all the actors go off and be crazy. You know, Pedro Pascal, he does. He goes off. He goes crazy. He's, you know, just as weird, but just as fun. You know, you can tell they're all having fun. There's a moment where they get high on LSD, and they're having a joke and laugh at each other, and then like they're having this moment where they get really sort of paranoid. It's, you know, it's great. You can just see how like you can see Nick Cage's brain, his active creativeness, just sort of changing and adapting to the scene and to the situation. The guy's a chameleon. Like, granted, there's a high potentiality that because I'm a huge Nick Cage fan, that I'm extremely biased, and that there were probably things in this movie that weren't very good, or that, you know, there were things that I missed. There's a high potentiality of that. So I will say now, 11 minutes into my review, that please take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I love this man, I love this work, and to me, he can't go wrong. As I mentioned, any of the really crappy movies that he's made that I've gone straight to streaming, right? I've seen them. You know, I remember, like, for example, I think one of the movies that he made early 2000s, which again not many people have seen, but I liked it. I think it was a movie. I think it was called Next or something like that. But it was basically a movie where Nicolas Cage, he could see into the future, but he could only see I think it was a minute or so into the future, and he used it to get rich. He used it to cheat death and that sort of thing. And there's some really cool scenes where like he's like one of the main things I remember. Like he's in a car and he's being chased by these guys, and he can see he gets this like sort of like flash forward, it's not a flashback because it's not in the past, but it's like a flash forward of what's going to happen, what a potentiality of what might happen, and that how he doesn't get he takes the wrong turn, I think it was, or he doesn't go fast enough in this one area, and that a train comes, takes him out, kills him, and then takes the guys out. Very Final Destination sort of style. So then he flashes back to being back in the car, sees the train coming, so then he speeds up and he manages to miss the train, and it hits everybody else and everybody else dies, right? And I don't really remember what the plot's about. I don't remember much about the plot or what happens after that, but there are loads of moments in that movie where like he gets flashed. Like for some reason I'm envisioning in my head this moment where he's going downhill, where he's running down this hill, and as he's running down the hill, there's loads of logs. I can't remember. It's been so long since I saw this movie. I don't even remember what the plot is, but I remember that Nick Cage is in it. I remember that he has these weird supernatural sort of powers, and it's a very underrated movie, I think. But then again, I think most movies that Nick Cage did is underrated. So I'm extremely biased, but I love this man. I do. I would watch anything with this guy. Um, I'd always be a supporter of Nick Cage because I just love the films he's done. Even the movies that aren't great, I will still watch. Like he did a movie called Left Behind, which, like, if you looked at the poster, you'd think, oh, this movie looks like a post-apocalyptic movie. Literally, this whole movie is set on a plane, right? And he's a pilot, and that there's the rapture. So a lot of people on this plane get raptured, and he's stuck with all the other passengers that didn't go to heaven, and that's it, really. You know what I mean? It's set on a plane of these people trying to realize why they didn't get raptured and what happened to the rest of them. You know what I mean? Like he made a movie called The Lord of War. Really, really good film about a gun smuggler. Fantastic movie. Not many people watched it. You know, he was in a movie called Vengeance. Then he did a sequel to that, Vengeance, a love story. The Knowing, which is a crazy, stupid movie, but he's fantastic in it. You know what I mean? I could go on and on and on. Like the Season of the Witch, the Season of the Witch. He's in this movie with Ron Perlman, right? And he's like a I think he's a knight. I think he's a knight of Knights Templar, that sort of thing. He's a knight sort of medieval times, and he's got to sort of like get this lady who's been accused of being a witch, who actually is a witch, and he has to take her basically to get sort of exercise sort of thing. Um, it's crazy. It's silly, but it's fantastic because Nick Cage is in it. You know what I mean? Oh, actually, I'm just actually flicking through um, Amazon, not Amazon, yeah, Amazon Prime TV, right? So I just found that movie next, right? It's a 2007 movie, right? It got a 6.2 in IMDb. I don't know if that's good or not. So Chris Johnson, Nicolas Cage, earns his living in a seedy Las Vegas magic act, but his ability to see a few minutes into the future is authentic. Government agent Carrie Ferns, Julie Moore, knows this, and relentlessly recruits him to help thwart a terrorist group from detonating a nuclear bomb in the heart of Los Angeles. Will the reluctant hero join the desperate race against the clock? I didn't even know there was terrorism in this movie. I generally thought this guy was just was cheating people out of money and that he was being chased by the mob. But apparently not. It's got Julianne Moore in it. So, but great film. You can't watch it, sadly. You have to rent it. But it's, again, I'm getting off track. The point is I'm trying to make, right? In my opinion, Nicolas Cage can't do no wrong. And I love this movie, right? One movie that I do recommend, right? That it's a silly movie. Like, it's not fantastic. Again, it's very silly, right? But it's a horror movie. It's got Nicolas Cage in it, right? And Selma Blair, and it's called Mom and Dad. And basically, if you've seen the movie The Crazies, it's kind of like that, where the mom and dad basically go mental, like go crazy, and they try to kill their kids because there's this like outbreak sort of thing happens, and the kids kind of have to try to survive while their parents try to basically hunt them and kill them. Again, it's a very strange movie, very odd. It's a horror sort of comedy, suspense sort of movie. Highly recommend it. It's a stupid movie, but it's fantastic. But this film, I've gone a bit of a tandem. This is what happens. This is what happens when I don't have a script. And people ask me now, look, do you have a script? No, I don't have a script. I have bullet points. Why do I have bullet points? Because if I don't have bullet points, tend to go in tandems and I go off and I just talk about anything, really. This is basically what it was like when I first started podcasting. When I didn't write script, I would literally be like, this is the topic I want to talk about, and I would just waffle on until I'd eventually come back to what I was talking about originally, but I would just waffle and waffle and waffle. I don't know if any of this is usable. Probably I might end up getting rid of this, or I might keep it. Who knows? But overall, going back to it, this movie is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. It was definitely worth the wait. Nicolas Cage, for always and forever will be one of my favorite actors. No matter what film he's in, whether it's been a big blockbuster or it's it's a simple crappy sort of straight to DVD sort of or even straight to streaming now sort of film, I'll always be there to watch it because I just think this guy, every movie he does, he always does something different. You know what I mean? And you can tell that he loves cinema. You can tell that he's a lover of acting. He loves what he does. You know what I mean? Like I don't. He's like one of the few actors where like I feel like he doesn't need to be in a superhero movie. Granted he was in Kick-Ass and he played Big Daddy, but like he doesn't need to be in Marvel. He doesn't need to be in DC. You know, he doesn't need to be any of these sort of films because if he turned up and like he was playing like I don't know a villain in the DC or Marvel universe, I would watch it. Like, yeah, I'd support it. But like, I don't feel like he needs to be, and I think that's just because how good of an actor he is. I'm not saying he's too good for it. I said he's not needed because all he does. It's hard to explain. I feel like he does well enough on his own, where like he wouldn't need it. And I feel like the way Nick Cage is, the way he was acting, that if we was to put him in the MCU, I'd feel like no matter what role you put him in, I don't think you'd ever get. I think that I feel it just feels like Disney would Disneyfy him. They would tone him down a bit too much. You know, um, and I don't know. I like the crazy Nick Cage, but I also like the very sort even National Treasure Nick Cage is a bit sort of whoa whoa ah, you know. So even then, like that's done by Disney. So I don't know, maybe, but I just feel like he's not needed. I feel like they don't need him. He doesn't need them. He's doing well enough on his own. Nick Cage is Nick Cage. The end. Need I say more? Um, so yeah, so that's me done rambling. I love this movie. I absolutely do. Fantastic. I'm a huge Nick Cage fan. Um, most of this probably is usable, but I'm probably going to keep it in anyway because it just shows off how much of a fan I am of him. So I'm going to stop talking now and we're going to go off to the end. But I hope everybody enjoyed this review of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Nicolas Cage, or should we just call it the Nick Cage movie? Absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. Definitely go out and see it. If you're a Nick Cage fan or not, just watch it, enjoy it. You'll have a fantastic time. Um, and yeah, so without further ado, off to the end. So here I am at the end. We're at the end of the review. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you liked it. Like I know I rambled a bit and I waffled, just like the old days, how I used to do it. But I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. Like as you can tell, I'm a huge Nick Cage fan. Like I will go to bat for this guy in any movie. I would defend him. You know that meme? We have that guy that sits at the desk and it says like, um, soy milk is nice, change my mind. That's me. It's like I'm that guy. Like Nick Cage is the best actor in the world. Change my mind. You can't change it, no matter what you say. I will always love this guy and his work. You know what I mean? I've loved him since I was a very, very young lad. I've always been a fan. Like generally, I'd love to meet him one day, and like just to have a chat with him, and just kind of like just to let him know how much I love his films, and mostly just to reminisce over like Eleanor for Gone in 60 Seconds. Just love that movie. I still quote that today. Me and my dad. It's means a lot to me and to the relationship I have with my dad. Um, so I owe that man a lot. Nick Cage. I really really do. So I'm a huge fan of him, and I think that's why I'm such a big fan of him because how much his movies have meant to me and how they've been there when in moments where I've sort of needed a laugh or I needed a giggle. Nick Cage has always been there as like to kind of bring me back up. And as I was watching this movie, as I mentioned, like it starts off with Con Air, and I'm sitting there going, I haven't seen Con Air in a long while. I want to watch Con Air after this, and so I'm going to watch Con Air after I finish doing this outro. Um, but yeah, that's been my review of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. As you can tell, loved it, huge fan. Hope you all liked it as well. Maybe I was a bit biased, but a bit too biased, maybe, or maybe I wasn't biased enough. Actually, let's all be honest, I was probably extremely biased. But that's what this movie's for. This movie's for people who are Nick Cage fans. You wouldn't watch it unless you was a Nick Cage fan. You know what I mean? You probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as I have or most of the other fans have if, again, you weren't a Nick Cage fan. You know what I mean? And that's what this movie's for. Again, it knows what this film knows what it is. It knows what it's here for. It's for fans of Nick Cage to enjoy Nick Cage being Nick Cage. It's as simple as that. The Raging Cage, that's all. So I love it. I enjoyed it. But I want to hear what you think. Your thoughts and opinions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did you like this movie? Have you not seen this movie? I've listened to my review. Have I sort of convinced you to go and watch this now? It's free on Disney Prime, on Amazon Prime, Amazon Video Prime. You can go watch it on there now. Definitely go watch it. Highly recommend it. And yeah, so on to the boring stuff as we get off. So as I mentioned, follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to hear about all the things that I'm watching and listening to and all that jazz, and to let me know if you like this movie or not. You can find this podcast on Spotify. You can find me on Anchor. You can find me on Google Podcasts. You can find me on Amazon Music Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube, which if you listen on YouTube now, don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, and a comment. I'll absolutely be incredibly grateful of that. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating. On my profile at the bottom, there is a star. If you click on that, you get a chart option between 1 to 5 stars. 5 stars, best thing you ever heard in your life. To 1 stars, it's so terrible that you don't want to listen to me talk ever again. Whatever you feel like is fair, whatever you feel like is warranted, I greatly appreciate it completely. And I think, yeah, that is it. So thank you very, very much for listening to my episode. Sorry, if it's a bit crazy, if I'm a bit, a bit wired and a bit mad and a bit crazy. As I said, I'm currently coming down off COVID, so it's probably the fever talking. That's why I'm a bit sort of, not with it. I'm with the birds, as they say. But I just wanted to get this out as I'm feeling a bit better, and I wanted to kind of catch up with myself because I've taken the week off. I've not watched or played anything, so I need to catch up with myself so we can get the backlog finished, and then we can get back onto doing new and interest. Well, not saying none of the stuff I've done so far is interesting, but like new stuff. Talk about new things and get away from the backlog and just sort of like go do some new stuff. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm probably going to go rest up now and watch the Con Air because I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I love that movie. And I will catch you all in the next one. So, bye bye. And remember, I'm Nick fucking Woo! Cage!